being there tonight again. We're really happy to host for the second panache talk Inês Liberato. Liberato? Don't know how do you want me to say that.
Doesn't matter. It's okay.
Inês Liberato. Inês, thank you so much for being there with us tonight. You are product coach at Founders Factory. I'd be so happy if you take a few minutes to share with us who you are, what is your background, share a bit about your story within the product field. And then, sure. And then the floor will be all yours to talk about the topic of the day, which is winning and losing about discovery. And like the last time we did it, guys, never hesitate to interrupt or interact with Inês. Ask her every questions you have. It's more like a Q&A session, etc. So never hesitate, okay?
Yeah, it's meant to be a conversation. We had some technical issues, that's why it was a bit delayed. But I won't be able to see you while I prepared some slides just to have as a foundation for the conversation today. But Roxanne will keep an eye on the chat. So if you have questions popping up or anything, she'll go, Inês, we have a question. And that's what we will sort out. Also, just to let you know, I'm going to share my screen because my kind of intro context setting for the talk is all there. I'm super prepared, hopefully.
It's coming, and now we can see your screen.
All right. So without delaying more, you can still see my screen perfectly? Yeah? Because I'm kind of swapping tabs, just to make sure. Okay, cool. Okay. So theme of today, winning and losing at discovery. It was a very good chat with Solène at the time when she invited me to be here. Thank you so much for being here and listening to my rambles. I realized that I've been doing this for quite a while. Salut. I'm Inês, and I'm Portuguese. I've been in London for 9 years now. I've worked across a lot of startups and scale-ups from 0 to 10 years old. These are the startups that I've worked at. They are anything from big data to gambling to IoT, affiliate marketing, regulation, financial regulation technology, and more recently doing a little bit of everything at Founders Factory, from helping ideas becoming products and companies to on the accelerator program to help scale companies that have been around for 3-4 years. It's important to say that my perspective on discovery is based on this experience and also different stages and flavors of discovery. So I consider discovery anything from making sure that everything is aligned in the user journey all the way down to new product innovation, R&D, if that makes sense. And yeah, my context is mostly London-based, so what I'll be sharing with you potentially makes sense in the London context, and it will be a little bit about you to understand if what can be pulled into your context or not. I think that's mostly the point of the conversation today. So I thought about the discovery as a game. There was this app, this tool that I was using for roadmap. Tool that always reminded me of a board game, because I would put the instructions together and share it with the rest of the business, but it was always very confusing until you start playing. It's like how do you feel when you start a new game? You read the instructions and you're a bit lost, and then you're not sure what to do. But when you start playing, that's when your kind of energy starts flowing. So it's more or less same with the discovery, really. The thing is, you will be designing your own board game, and that's really cool, I think. So to start your game design, you need context, because how the type of game that you want to play, the type of strategies that you want to have put in place will depend of your context. And this context is broken down into what I like to call big four areas. So the business, the people, their talents, the skills, the cycles of the business. So working with digital and physical products will have a completely different cycle to working with regulation technology. There's different seasonalities. Some things will take longer, but also the systems. So what are your patterns in the context that you're operating in? So how long does it take you to put something out? How long do you make daily releases or you make monthly releases? What is the level of transparency? Do you have any feedback loops? So all of those things you'll have to think about into your own context. And then you need your own board. You need to design your board. And my board normally is the roadmap. And I like breaking down the roadmap into two big sections. The first section is a little summary about everything that it does. This is a screenshot from one of the tools that I like using, which is ProdPad. And they split that very well, so that the front is mostly about what is it that you're trying to do, what are your objectives, the personas, the designs. It puts everything into the one place. And then obviously how you split the work. So the intention here is that the board is going to be the place where everyone comes to play the game, really. So it feels a bit complicated because there's a lot to keep in mind, and potentially I'm going a little bit too fast. Let me know and I can slow down. But the good news is that this is achievable. Other theories out there will help you putting this together. There's a lot on discovery. There's a lot of different frameworks. There's a lot of different content out there, and you can inspire and bring a lot of that to your context and to your organization. And you can always you should apply a discovery mindset when you're putting this board together. However, just keep an eye out for the traps. And this is a little bit of, I kind of talked a bit about the best, shiny, this is what you should do. But from someone who's been doing this for a while and has made these mistakes, this is what I wanted to share with you today. This is a safe zone. I don't want to be finger pointing and say, oh, you did this thing. It's mostly about, these are the things that I've learned. I done things very well, but also made a lot of mistakes. And so I wanted to share them with you. So guilty, falling in love with the process or being a purist. Teresa Torres comes out with the next opportunity tree and I'll be all over it. Or Marty Kagan comes out with the next blog post and I'll be, be one of these people. Melissa Perry said this, I feel like all of us do a little bit of this because we want to learn from the best. It's all not normal, but it's sometimes we can get a little bit tied up with, oh, this is the perfect way to get discovery right and get our best products to the customers. But sometimes we get a little bit tied up with absolutes and being a purist, and that gives you a go to jail card. The other trap that you might fall into is, again, I've done this a lot in the beginning, is you're working directly with the design team, with the engineering team. You are the one sitting in that user conversations, and you're absorbing all this information, but you end up having the information all to yourself, or keeping everything in Jira, or keeping everything in Miro, or whatever tools that you use to think and process information, and you forget to share with the rest of the organization. So this normally it's tricky because the rest of the organization doesn't really know what you're doing, and the whole discovery gets a little bit, it's great for you, but then what about the rest of the company, right? So this is, you get in the danger of quicksand, and you probably need to spend a bit of time organizing all those documents and putting it in a place where everyone can work from and share. The last one is, I mean, I could put 100. The last one is listing all the reasons why you are not going to do something. I've done it myself. I hear this with a lot of companies that I work with. Is product is a department of no. We keep saying no to things because we're so overwhelmed, because there's so much to do, because we have our reasons, because again, we keep all the information to ourselves and we don't share with the rest of the organization how busy we are, all the things that we're working on. All these three are kind of one and the same, if that makes sense. And so, you kind of, if you play Uno, you know that this card means that you miss your chance to play. And this is probably one of the biggest ones, that you kind of lose the attention from the rest of the organization, and people stop wanting to share things with you because you just go and sorry, no. But hey, these are just some kind of things to keep your eyes on. Is not something that you're going to go and beat yourself with the stick and say, oh, I'm so bad, I'm bad at product management because I don't do these things. But now let's try and think what you can do instead, some winning strategies, uplifting the room a bit. Or things that actually worked with me, or to counterbalance, because again, we're all human, and sometimes I continue doing those mistakes. Is that a smaller scale or less often, because we all make mistakes, right? Some winning strategies can be, like I mentioned earlier, applying discovery techniques. It's really important here. So instead of trying to move all the company because you're so, oh my God, this discovery thing is amazing, I want everyone to start doing it. Pick up a team, or start doing it in your own team, and start creating your own strategy, your own board game, your own rules of the game kind of thing for you and your team, and start putting those practices in place, because then you start shaping your behavior and other people will be curious about what are you doing. But treat it as your product, right? Treat your strategy game or your discovery game as your product. So you need to define your target market. And here, target market can be, is it the CEO? Is it the sales team? Is it the marketing team? Is it the customer support team? Maybe it's a little bit of all of them, but just at different stages in your process. You need to do your research. So when you go and speak with someone from sales or the CFO, for example, or someone in finance, how do they like to communicate? Because if you go to them with Miro, with diagrams, they probably won't be super convinced about what you're trying to say. So doing your research and speaking in their language is very, very important, because otherwise they just don't get it. You go back to using those buzzwords. If you put yourself into cycles and you test often and you get feedback often, you get to go through the starting stage quite often and collect, instead of actual $200, a lot of knowledge, and that's very valuable. While normally when you think about discovery, we think about start small and do scrappy, but it's always important to have a vision as well. So this is the duality that we keep battling with, and creating incredible products, because we always have this ability to start small but think big. And in the same way, apply it to your own approach to this. Finding your allies is very important. So the people who that can scale this process, because you won't be able to be there every single time in every single room to make the decision. So making sure that you have those relationships in place is really important. Looking for sponsorship is a little bit of the same, but this is more of a convincing some people, and that probably are not necessarily your immediate allies, is very important. Like I was saying before, avoid the buzzwords. Like, for example, the word discovery might mean anything to anyone, really. So what is exactly are you doing? Are you going to speak with users? Are you testing a prototype? Are you creating a survey and waiting for the replies for the survey? Are you launching a newsletter? What is it that you're doing? Instead of talking about, oh, we're doing discovery, what is it? Break it down, people, because this kind of techniques have been around for a while and is not such a long stretch to think about these. And for me, one of the most important ones is the translation layer. So we think each and one of us has a way to communicate and has a way to think. So if you identify what is your layer and then can translate to the other people in the business, that becomes super powerful, because they will not want the diagrams, well, unless they're part of the design team and they're building the diagrams with you. But what is that the people who you're talking with need to understand? What is the message that you need to convey? So all of this plays a very strong role. And finally, since we're on the theme of games, I picked these two images because I don't know if many of you play board games or this kind of games, but I always find it funny because if I play with different groups of friends, each or different family members, they all have different rules on how to play these games. So the rules of Monopoly in my house will be completely different to the rules of Monopoly in my uncle's house. The objective is still the same. The outcome is still the same. But what each card means and how much you collect, sometimes it will depend on the money that is still, how old your board is and how much money we have to to share with the rest of the group. But this is mostly to say that if you set up principles, people will understand, and it's okay if they play your discovery game their own way and they participate in their own way, because it's about it's not about being a purist again, right? It's about, for example, we can do a small test before we ship something. We will ask users, we won't take more than X amount of time to wait for feedback and move on with what we need to do. Or we don't need everyone's approval to move on with something, for example. These are clear items that you can add and communicate to the rest of the people, and people know where you stand. And so it brings clarity to everyone in the room. I found this image and I thought it was hilarious because I don't know how familiar you are with SAFe, but it's big. It's technology. It's a bunch of processes that you put together and are just a bunch of rules and very complicated. And I thought it was hilarious that there was a board game actually called Let's Be Safe. This is what you're trying to avoid, essentially. Finally, notes on a kind of a bonus track type of thing. So I'd like to share a bit of the evolution or different flavors of discovery that I've applied in the past. So also, again, thinking about the context and thinking about the appetite and thinking about the people that I had working with me, I have different flavors of how I communicate this discovery board game to people. So I can have it a little bit more relaxed in terms of breaking down, but you can see there that for me, there was an analogy of discovery as a cake. Just a bit of context. It's a bit of an in-joke because I, at some point before coming into the world of technology, I used to have my own cake business. And so this is how this kind of discovery as a cake analogy comes. It's a whole other talk. Don't worry about it now. But just to say that it's about the presentation, it's about breaking it down, and it's about explaining what each word means and what to expect at each stage. Kind of small, really quick to put together. Or you can have something a little bit more complicated depending on the size of the organization and the appetite for risk as well. So what you see there is a bit of a more complex system, but also when you're talking about regulation technology, and this a lot more slower moving, but you can see a couple of, there's still an appetite to explore. There's still an appetite to go and speak with users. Like just locking in on an element here, and how I normally battle the not being the no person. This year is a hypothesis hub, and this is what I use to talk with people. And if anyone comes with an idea, goes to the hypothesis hub, we have a conversation. We make sure that everyone is aligned on what are the objectives for this quarter, what are the objectives for the business, what is the vision, does this fit with that even? And then if so, we will move on the rest of the discovery process. But having that kind of staging piece helps a lot with, you still, sometimes people just want to have the conversation instead of just getting a hard no. But you can see there's a bit more description about what to expect and etc., because the organization is larger, the organization is a little bit more risk averse. Yeah, I think that overall it will always be work in progress. Don't feel bad about it. It's the faster you try, that you start exploring, the faster you get your knowledge. I mean, it's again like what we do with product management. We release things and then we try to see what comes on the other way. Identifying the sponsors is really important. Not trying to do this on your own, because at the end of the day, you're not doing it for yourself and because it's cool and because Marty Kagan does it. It's because identifying why it values the business and why it values the customer. It's very important. Then we have, why are you doing this in the first place? We're going through all of this. You're speaking with users, and when are we going to release something? Why is this so special? Why is this important for us to do? Communicate often in a diverse manner. And what I mean with this is that at some point, for example, I was in an organization where they had never launched a new product for the first time. No one in the organization had that experience. And so it was really difficult for them to understand that a new product can be buggy and a new product can break. And so that I had to implement a couple of rituals. For example, get in the same room once or twice a week, the engineering team, the customer support team, and the product services team. So the people who are building the product for the customer, the people who are supporting the customer, the engineers, and the meeting was about meet the bugs. So we do have bugs, but what is it that they cause? Are there workarounds that we can do while we keep evolving, while we keep releasing on a good enough cadence? Also was good, there was this a thing that also organized called Product Talks, where every 2 weeks we talked about the stuff that we're working on, the releases that we're doing, demos, open space for people to ask questions. But also we would always bring a theme based on what people wanted to learn. So sometimes it would be about UX and sometimes it would be about AI, but having a little bit, helping the organization, especially if they haven't been in that position, to talk about those big questions. Some people are just embarrassed. So make sure that you carve in some time for open door time if people want to ask questions that are a bit embarrassed to ask in front of other people. So this is what I mean about communicate often and diversify your communication. And ultimately, just ship things. We can talk about planning all of our lives, but one thing that I've learned from the engineering team is like, F it, ship it. Just play the game. Stop worrying about if people understand what discovery is about, blah, blah. Just do it, show it. Show why it's so valuable, show why it matters so much. And yeah, merci.
Thank you so much, Inês. Loved this talk. Thank you so much. Guys, do you have any question for Inês, or do you want to launch a specific topic discussion about that? Do not hesitate to take the mic.
I can start first.
Yeah.
Inês, I really loved how you talked about the trap, falling into the trap of talking about discovery, but no one has the same understanding of what it means exactly and what are the activities and efforts implied. Do you have any concrete example on how to tackle that?
Yeah, so specifically, if you're going to be saying to, if you're going to be in a meeting with, for example, the sales team, and you're having an argument on, they just promised the customer the next feature that you don't even have in the roadmap, and you go and start arguing, we need to do discovery. This will mean nothing for them, and so breaking that down on why we need to set out or go through this kind of, I hate the word process, let's call it method, approach, system, anything else. I feel like people get a little bit process. And so think about, we need to understand what is the priority for this. If you have your roadmap in place, show people what you're working on. Let's start with that. This are the things. So if you want that to be, start with the yes. Okay, I'm happy for you to say this to the customer. But we said this to this other customer, this to this other customer, this to the other customers. They're all in progress right now. Should I drop this for us to start focusing on what this new thing that you're talking about? I think that being very material with what discovery is and why it matters, you can then go into the theory and go, okay, this is potentially a technology that we have never worked on. So I need to give time to the engineering team to figure this out. If we are in a SaaS business, for example, we need to understand what is the impact of putting this out there. How is it going to affect customer A, B, and C? It can be a great idea. And again, talking about the positives. It can be a great idea, but what about if we can sell this to other 3 people and not just to this one customer? How are you going to go and find out? Okay, let me go and have a chat with the customer team, with our customers, or see what the customer support team has seen anything around this topic. Let's go and involve people in the conversation and explain to them, instead of talking about how wonderful discovery is about what is it going to give them? How is it going to support them in what they're doing? Because they are, at the end of the day, and probably I'll be, killed by saying this, but they are selling your products. They are doing their jobs. It's just a bit misguided sometimes.
Love that answer. Thank you, Inês. And don't worry, this is a safe space.
Thank you so much.
Other questions, guys?
Do you guys have a question? I have one, but I want to let you the mic.
Was it just a question? I mean, was it that bad? Did I talk for too long? I mean, happy to get feedback. This is, every talk that I give, I'm always happy to get feedback. So if you say, Inês, this is too high level, it's not working for me, or too, I need more details, I'm happy to give more details and to, again, this is super safe space.
I think I just have a comment, but I think it's quite a general comment. It's interesting on how you say, just get along with discovery, just, make it happen, just, don't think too much about the process and don't over engineering it. But at the same time, we kind of it's almost a scientific methodology, it's kind of like a balance between the two. Should we use discovery as it's a scientific methodology, so it needs to be replicable in, all product manager in the world needs to know exactly how to do it, so we can really compare our, results on the way we are doing, or we should, just at the end of the day, just talking to your users and trying to understand what is happening, and, more like an action-oriented thing. Element. So I kind of feel like there's a bit of the balance between the two. Should we be scientific or should we be more product leaders? I don't know.
It's both at the end of the day, and you're spot on, Clément. It's both things, because this is very clear for us and why we're doing this, why we should do this, and why we should just get on with it. But we are not doing this just for ourselves or just for the people in our team. The people who are what we normally call in the sidelines, we don't want to ostracize the rest of the business from this. So creating some sort of what I call translation layer, and explain what is going to happen at every step of the way. Again, like Victor is saying, be lean, start with something. But like, for example, I feel that when I talk about discovery to the leadership team or to the CEO, to the CTO even sometimes, or to the chief sales officer, they think immediately, it's going to take ages until we do anything. This is the first reaction that I get. Oh my God, they're going to test everything. You don't need to test everything kind of conversation. And it's about, okay, we have this, the idea is that we can be doing all the things, right? So we need to communicate why we're choosing to do these things first. So the prioritization piece, and what are the steps we get into to make sure that we have the best customer outcome and the best business outcome as well. So it's going to be an evolution for everyone involved in the conversation, but it's always a bit of both. And there will be a time and a place for everything, because sometimes you want to go back and think, okay, that didn't work so well. Like you have a retro and say that didn't work so well. And sometimes you don't know if it's the actions that you took or the process that you took. So it's about being able to have something to look back and say, okay, we spent too much time in this process, in this piece here. Maybe we don't need to do this next time.
Thank you, Inês. Victor, I saw you just drop a question on the chat, which is, how does communication scale on bigger companies?
In communication scale, in what way? Can you give me a bit of more better context?
Yeah, I'm thinking that if you need to be communicating all the time how you are moving forward, that if you have a company with a lot of products, that makes a lot of information. So it's harder. In smaller companies, usually you have more opportunistic approach. That's what I mean, be lean. But then, and I think that's what Clement had in mind, is that when you get bigger, you were thinking about process and stuff like that in order to minimize the effort of communicating and getting things to move forward, because people is missing information and stuff like that. But in my opinion, usually it means like putting a lot of process, which is hard because it's a burden. So that's why when you say safe, I say boo. That's because I don't like it at all, right? Because it seems like agile, but it's not. And yeah, I just wonder if you have any experience on that. How, as a product manager, we should communicate, even though we know that the company is getting bigger.
No, yeah, absolutely. So I feel like there's two layers to that question. There's one about communication and another one about, when we grow bigger, does that mean that we need to adopt all these massive processes? I'll start with the second one because it will lead to the first one. The processes question is an interesting one, because I don't think it's an all or nothing answer. It's when you're small, there's three of you, you don't need to have a process because you just have a chat between the three of you, and that's fine. But when you are 12 or 40 or 250, that one chat times everyone else in the business, it becomes a networks problem, right? How many other people do I need to be telling the same information, right? The way that there's a couple of interesting approaches to tackle that. So making sure, this is where, for example, the role of product operations comes in very nicely, because it kind of stipulates that if you have the question about X, you go to this place. If you are expecting an announcement about Y, you go to this other place, or this is the cadence at which we talk about things. I don't think that is necessarily, we need to overinflate on processes, because then we just slow down a lot. But the other angle is setting up communities. So in the same way that we have this community here, creating, instead of, it's a little bit of an evolution of the Spotify model, for example, but making sure that you have a group of people that you create that, allyship, the sponsorship with, that you can be open and honest with, and you create those kind of conversations, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing. And so the more leveling up there is with the tools that we use, how we use data, how does the product make money, how the company make money. So all of that information should be available for everyone. And that's a little bit of what product operations focuses on, and then makes communication a lot easier, because then people know where to go. And there'll be people also helping facilitating those conversations as well. I hope that kind of makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it gives me some ideas.
So I don't think that there is this or that. I think that you can definitely put a comfortable layer. This will be a pendulum, right? A balance. You'll never get it quite right, because it's always going to be a work in progress. Yeah, so there is not that silver bullet. It's about trying what works for you.
Yeah, and I like a lot the fact that you put the point on the dynamics, right? Because as you said, it's a network, but it's a living organism. So yeah, you need to think that you're always adapting, and this is key for me as product managers. It's like we're trying to find which is the best way, because the best way changes on time.
Exactly. Hence also like the principles aspect instead of the rules, because the rules don't scale, right? Principles do.
Yeah, because
Thank you.
That gives you the North Star. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Inês. Dunya, you have a question as well, right?
Yes, I had a question. Thank you, Inês, for the presentation. That was quite interesting. I had a question still about communication, since we're talking about it. So during discoveries, we often talk about communicating before discovery to explain whether to the stakeholders, to the company, why we're going to invest so much effort and money on something. And then we also talk a lot about at the end, here are the results, etc. But there is the in-between, which is the discovery itself. And at some point, I'm sometimes wondering how involved should some stakeholders be in the milestones of each step of the discovery, whether there are findings of the problem exploration phase, or when we are organizing, let's say, workshops on the solution ideation, and how should we make these stakeholders part of each step of the discovery, which can, in one hand, be a bit of a burden, because we do that, of course, to get their insight, but also to make them feel involved and to agree on each step and feel like they're part of it. But at the same time, like if you get them out of it and you wait for the results to say, here's what we found, you can have a problem with them not being aligned with the results. So just wondering what's the level of involvement.
So the level of involvement, the way that I normally approach this is to have a conversation and to say, this is what we're thinking about doing. It'd be great if you could participate in this, because you already have a plan in your head, right? You might not have it written down or have it super clear, but you have an idea of your timeline most of the time. So it's about, instead of having the conversation around at this date, I'll definitely have all these interviews done, for example, is to say this is why I put some emphasis on the cycles conversation, because the cycles conversation can also be a translation layer for some of the stakeholders, because what you can do, you can set up that, for example, over the course of 6 weeks, we'll be working on this piece of a product discovery, whatever you're comfortable of calling it. Some product people hate the word project, but at the end of the day, and so you can say that these are going to be the activities that we'll be running over the course of 6 weeks. And so you can say, at the end, join us to do a demo of what we achieved at the end of 6 weeks. We will be inviting you to some workshops, to some activities, drop-in sessions. And this is the level of participation. So it's all to say that you can be really clear on what you expect from people, and people then have the right to say, sorry, I don't have time for that. And you say, it's absolutely fine. And like you said, this involves work. And I think it's really important that you mentioned that, because not all tools and all systems in the world will remove the amount of work that this entails. It's a lot of work. I like using some tools to support all the work. Like, for example, if people are not able to join a session, if people are not able to participate, what was the one thing that we learned today? And that can be your Slack channel that you can put on the side, or an email. There used to be this really cool thing called 15-5. I don't know if anyone heard of it, but it's essentially 15 minutes to write 5 bullet points at the end of the week. And that's what you share with the group. And so super summarized, kind of, it doesn't take you that long. You put that time in the calendar and take 15 minutes to write 5 things that you learned this week. And that's what you share with people, and invite people to the conversation, because this is the most important part. I would even replace communication with conversation, really, because conversation implies participation. So I feel like you need to establish, what do you need from those people? Is it approval? Do you actually need them to participate? Are they going to be your blockers later on? And that's why you need to make sure that they're involved in the process. So answering yourself to those questions, you then be able to identify what are the techniques that you're going to use, and at which stage you're going to involve them.
Yes, thank you. Makes sense.
Thank you so much. Hippolyte, you have a question?
Yes, I'll be too quick.
By the way.
Thank you for the presentation as well. I just wanted to know, you mentioned fuck it, ship it at the end, and I really like the mentality of this, but I'm always kind of wondering, how do we know, because it sounds kind of counterintuitive with the process of discovering, which is all about like trying to mitigate risks and trying to be sure you understand the right thing before doing the right thing. So is there a way to know when you're ready to actually ship? Is there like a minimum viable discovery, something that lets you say, even if it still feels uncomfortable, we might be able to ship something right now?
Yeah. You first, I think that I need to say that with a bit of caveat. I feel like you need to be prepared to fail when you do those things, because ultimately, and again, going back to the traps, you might be caught in doing discovery forever and not releasing anything, right? Is it really discovery if you don't discover anything? I used to say this to designers that I used to work with, because normally they're the ones who fall into the trap. Perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist myself, and I want it to be, pixel perfect before I send it. Oh, my baby, you start self-questioning yourself, and then the internal stakeholders start, oh, I'm not sure, but Joe once told me that this is not really what customers want, blah, blah. And you keep delaying your thing. And at some point, you just need to be stubborn and say, we need to put this in front of people, not just in a controlled environment, in their day-to-day world, because sometimes you might spend 6 weeks building something or discovering something, and turns out they don't even tap on that button because they're too busy, or everything else in the app works so well or the product that they don't really use it. So one thing that I used to say is that it doesn't exist until it's in the real world. So this is why the F it, ship it is there to remind you as a push. Is it good enough for you to learn? Is it good enough to collect the learnings that you are expecting to? Also, worth saying that maybe part of your discovery is to invest on, or part of the hackathons that you might run with the engineering team is to make sure that you invest on putting some staging environments in place to make sure that instead of you launching something to all of your, 1,000 customers, maybe you can run some experiments with 10 customers, 12 customers. Segmentation, very important as well. Going back to that product operations mindset, if you have a clear log on who your personas are, what is the different kind of breakdown personas or actors, I don't want to get into personas versus jobs to be done fight here. It's whatever works for you. But, some level of segmentation that you can go, okay, I think that this piece of functionality that I'm working on would have a huge impact with this segment here. Launch it to them, then leave the other ones behind, right? It's also to do with that context that I was talking about at the beginning. If you are in a super risk-averse world, then you probably need to adopt this pilot approach, right? And segmentation will be probably in a B2B kind of context. You'll be very close to the people that you'll be experimenting things with. Create an environment that only them can operate in, and set up a Slack group for them that says you get exposure to the first launches that we do. And it's a little bit of that mentality of this is the messy world. We don't know what's going to happen here, but you subscribe to this, you know what you're up for.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Inês. Okay, we are running out of time. Sorry for the agenda, guys, but the discussion was so insightful. Thank you so much again, Inês. I drop you really quickly a poll so that you can give us some feedback on the session, guys. And yeah, I let you go for your Thursday night. Thank you so much to everybody. Thank you so much again, Inês. It was so great to have you with us tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Hope it was useful. I'm on Twitter if anyone has any questions.
Sure, we share with the guys your LinkedIn account so that they can reach you for any needs or question.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye. Hey.